Hello, welcome to our Celtic State of Mind. It's the Monday Club, -1 temporarily. As you can see, I'm Tony Haggerty, and I've been joined by the amazing Amy Canavan, and we're a man down until 1:45. Amy, the resident rascal Russell Boyce, will be joining us then. He has work commitments, and before anybody runs away, do not adjust your set. My shirt is just temporary interference, and I'm not going line dancing after this broadcast, in case you're wondering. Now, Amy, let's celebrate the positive right away. Celtic won, and we're talking about a Celtic victory on a Monday. Woohoo! Yeah, come on. Now, Russell was on the after-match show yesterday, the Bulletin. Just wanted to get your reaction to the win first and foremost, Amy.
It's fantastic. It's needed, so needed. To be honest, did the performance really warrant it? I'm not 100% sure, but you know, it's kind of what we've talked about for so long now. It's that winning ugly. Celtic done that yesterday. It wasn't a game glamorous on the eye. You're not going to be talking about it for the ages. It wasn't, you know, the greatest advocate example of handball, but it was winning ugly. These are the sort of games that, you know, champions need to win, that Celtic need to win, that Celtic have won over the years. As much as we say, you know, Celtic have probably enjoyed quite a lot of joy up at Pittodrie in recent years, it's not always been the easiest venue. You don't always have it your own way. It's a struggling Aberdeen side as well, there's no denying that, but it's a win, it's a away win. That's that sort of, you know, what do you want to call it? But it's that hump on the back that it is over with now. You know, you're no longer carrying that around. So the win's the win. You've got to take it. It's the win and ugly that I'm sure we'll come on to discuss. But it's just fantastic to be able to talk about a win.
That albatross round the neck's been lifted, Amy. That'll do. Go for that. Now, we are smiling. Hey, positive. Let's start with a major positive. And Jota, who scored the winning goal yesterday, Portuguese winger on loan from Benfica. Celtic have the option to buy him at the end of that loan spell for $6.5 million, Amy. Jota has bought into Celtic from the off. 2 goals, 2 assists and 7 appearances. He's getting it, isn't he? And he said yesterday after the game, a great thing, I think he said his mum and dad were in amongst the Celtic supporters yesterday, and he wanted to speak to them to see how they felt, to see how it was for them. So that's just a guy who's grasped it, hasn't he? And, you know, I think if Celtic are prudent and wise, they would be looking at that right now and thinking, yeah, he's a guy that can enhance our side moving forward.
You have to just chuck all the money that you can at him. I would have him signed up, get that name on the dotted line, absolutely everything, whatever you want to call it. Like you say, he gets it. It's so evident. He's so eager. But I think what was really crucial perhaps to it is, you know, we kind of spoke about it initially when he held the press conference, is that his English is really, really, really good. You know, so he's not even, that bedding in period is going to be 10 times quicker, because Tony, you know it from talking to former players. It makes it all the easier when the guys can come in and they can just talk the lingo. They might not, you know, obviously understand it all, but you can have a little bit of banter with them. You can get them in and like into the team sort of spirit, and that's evident. You know, you look at the celebrations afterwards, which was amazing to see. You know, them going up, because that's been such an image over so many years. You know, you've seen Dyler, Rodgers, Lennon, everyone up there celebrating at that corner at Pittodrie. So that was a real lovely moment to see as well for Postecoglou, but also for the players, for Jota obviously to be the winner, be the goal defining match winner. It was just a lovely moment. It was a great goal as well. I know we'll come and dissect it, but it's just his eagerness to be there. You know, bust in the guts, a terrific movement to play. It's a really, really well worked goal. Really, really Celtic-esque. You know, and every good quality. You know, Rogic getting on the ball, Turnbull as well. It was their good moments. Montgomery busting a gut proves how keen he is to be getting forward as well, you know. And again, I know we'll come on to discuss it, but I just thought it was a really, really well worked goal. It was great that he was on the end of it, because he deserved the goal. I think especially there was that effort in the first half. You know, he cut in on the inside of Ramsey, who I thought Ramsey actually played pretty well. He's a great prospect for the future for Scotland as well. But like you say, he hammered off the crossbar. Did the keeper maybe have it covered? I don't know, because it was dipping and it looked quite a fair bit at the end. But that effort alone, that deserved a goal. But for him to get it at the end, it was a great moment.
I think he also deserved a bit of luck because he crashed one off the bar against Dundee United as well.
Yeah.
So he was cursed in front of goal, so it was good for him to get that, just for himself. But I think, and like yourself, this is a no-brainer to make that loan deal permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, another vital cog in this machine, and it's just brilliant to have him back because he just lifts everybody, not even his play, but just the fact that he plays football with a smile on his face and everybody loves him. There was that great image of Joe Hart grabbing him and a bear hug at the end. Kyogo. It's just the importance of Kyogo. 26-year-old Japanese internationalist, mate. 11 appearances, 8 goals, 1 assist. And, he's just vital to the way that Ange wants this system to work, isn't he? And yesterday it was that presence of mind that, okay, I'm going to go on the end of this, but I'm going to put it in with my chest. How many players would have eluded them, or they wouldn't have even had the quickness and thought in the brain to put it in with their chest? I just thought it was a brilliant striker's goal. Just that instinct that you can't teach that. You're born with that, and he kind of gambled. He knew Bates maybe wasn't going to get there, and he thought, I'm putting this in by hook or by crook, and he used an unfamiliar part of the anatomy for a striker to score a goal. But that's what pleased me the most about it.
It's the instinct, isn't it? It's like you say, it's just wanting to score, and how am I going to? What gives me the best opportunity to score? It was a terrific ball in as well. Again, you're talking about moments. David Turnbull, perhaps the game probably wasn't his best game yesterday, but that was 2 really crucial moments that he more than played his part. It was a terrific delivery, and I just loved the goal. Like you say, he beats the man quite easily and he gets himself into that position, and it's no way is it a fluke, because you see he sets his body up, the arms go behind. You can talk about how influential it is. You don't want to, I think I just saw a comment come up there as well, you don't want to become a one-dimensional team or a one-man team, and just rely on Kyogo. But his importance, it cannot be undermined. And you're talking about, Jota and a guy who gets it. Kyogo's a guy who gets it. I think the angle yesterday for the TV, it was fantastic that you could see Rogic and Kyogo celebrate, as it goes, and he was looking back to the Celtic fans, and he clearly loving his football. He just seemed
that was a brilliant picture, Amy, as you said, when Celtic scored the goal, and he was just standing himself, and he was like, yeah. And I just thought that sums it up, because that's someone who's new to Celtic, new to the team, but that's what it means to him so early, and it's reciprocated by his popularity, obviously in the team and the supporters as well. It's a joy to watch that, isn't it? The urban culture coming in here and says that's the first of 3 big games, 3 points taken. If we get 9, we can hang on till January. Don't disagree with that. We were talking last week about our thoughts that they couldn't win any of them. That's a brilliant start, and it's something to build on, isn't it? Absolutely,
and you've got to take the positives out of it. It's probably like this international breaks probably came at the worst time. Ange was joking about it as well, that you just don't want anyone to come back unscathed, but you just want momentum to carry on. So this little break, it could work in both ways. It's always great to go into the international break on the back of a win, because you're not mulling any sort of defeat over with, but you just really want to keep it going. And obviously we all know what happened on the last international break with injuries and that. But going back to obviously like the guys who get it, and being Kyogo and Jota, you look at their sort of partnership, and really the 3 up front as well, because I throw a bad into that. Again, it wasn't his best performance yesterday. He's kind of hit like a little bit of a lull period, perhaps. I don't know if he's maybe burnt out, or who knows, maybe does need a little bit of a rest, because I was really impressed by him when he first came in. I do think you've got to remember that he is 19 as well, but you look at the 3 of them, whenever one scores or whatever or anything like that, they are the first to all sort of like congregate together and celebrate, and that's great as well. Who knows, maybe it helps the 3 of them that they're all new to this team. We spoke about maybe you'd have liked a little bit of an experienced head up there, and that's why you're relying on Rogic and Turnbull to be that step up. But the 3 of them, there's a little team there, or it certainly appears that anyway, because they genuinely look like a obviously Abada, like you say, I know we'll probably come into that, and who knows, maybe with James Forrest hopefully coming back soon, who really knows when he'll be back, but if he wants to keep his place in the team, I definitely think that'll be a little bit of competition there, because we've spoke about how much we've missed James Forrest, but as a trio right now they certainly look happy, and I think that's a nice thing to see as well, even when Abada's not playing his best, which he's certainly not, he's not looking downhearted, like Tony, we've seen ourselves that there's players that if they're not the one who's scoring, then they're just not really too fussed about the celebrations, and obviously they're happy, but it always looks like there's a little bit of a side note to it. Abada's still first to Kyogo, he's first to Jota, and getting in and amongst the celebrations. It's not all about him, so that team spirit certainly looks there between the three of them, and again, that's just another great thing to see.
Now, you spoke about the international break coming up. Ange joked about players getting injured, and if they get injured in international duty, they don't bother coming back, which I thought was a nice touch, just kind of, he seemed a bit more relaxed about it in the leave. But now look at players returning from injury, Amy, and I look at the likes of Greg Taylor, Christopher Julian, Forrest, Juranovic. Now, these guys are still to come back into the Celtic team.
Yeah.
Do you see 4 of them being automatic starters, or even though he's not injured, but there is a school of thought amongst the Celtic supporters thinking now that Juranovic should maybe come in for Ralston at right back and play Liam Scales at left back in their natural positions, because the defence is still cause for concern. But of the injured parties coming back, that's what Taylor, Julian, Forrest, Juranovic, I think all of them should be, if they're fit, pushing for automatic starts, shouldn't they?
They have to all be pushing, if you're a Celtic player, you have to be pushing for that starting 11. Taylor's a funny one. I'm quite a big fan of Greg Taylor, always kind of have been. I think he's always, for a long period of time anyway, was kind of the scapegoat and just received unnecessary flack, especially when there was nobody else really in that position. Another option where I can't, Montgomery obviously wasn't in the setup last year, but wasn't really used. I really, really do like Adam Montgomery. I don't think he suits the left back role, though. I think he's much more comfortable when he is that further forward. Hence why he done so well getting on the end of the ball for the cross yesterday for the second goal. And I just don't know if perhaps it was maybe too physical a side he was up against yesterday, but I felt sometimes it was just a little bit too easy to be beaten. I don't know if Taylor is the answer, or like you say, is it Scales? But Scales himself, Paul keeps putting out that video from the press conference. He would much rather be as the centre half compared to the left back. Obviously, he can play there, and it's kind of what we thought he was signed as. So it's an iffy one. Right now, obviously, Taylor's still going to be out for a wee while yet, isn't it? Because it's the surgery that he's after. So Montgomery has time. He certainly has time on his hands, because Ange has the trust in him, clearly. You don't play as many times already as Montgomery has. If you don't, because there are other options there. There are times that Juranovic could have been out there before the injury, or he could have played Scales. Or you give somebody else a chance. But he's put the faith in Montgomery, and I would still say he is getting repaid, because he does give 110%. And you can kind of say that on the opposite flank about Ralston. But for how long does that 110% last, sort of thing? You have got to be producing. But moments like yesterday, when you're going to be grabbing the assist, then they are the ones that will count in your favour, because he's shown that he does have a part in this team. It's just trying to figure out where exactly it is. Don't know if maybe the formation then doesn't suit him the best, because he's not really going to be breaking into that midfield, and he's certainly not going to be breaking into that front three, especially now not ahead of Jota. So it's trying to figure out where does Adam Montgomery exactly fit into this side, because I do believe that there is a future for him, certainly in the Celtic side, because he does offer a lot. And again, you always have that soft spot for an academy player coming through the ranks, because they're the sort of guys that you want to see coming through. We've rattled on for so long, especially towards the tail end of last season, that it's important to get these guys coming through the ranks at the club and then getting them into the first team. Now that we're doing that, we now can't say, let's put them out, because that's what we want to see. And it's little moments like that, and maybe with a little bit more experience, these sharpness, tidiness, like compactness will come up, because it is still a very new back four or back five. It can sometimes turn into, it is a new kind of setup, And then going on to that, or what's your views on Montgomery? Sorry, actually.
My view on Montgomery is I think he's a better player deployed more forward. I thought he kept his concentration level yesterday. That's why he's in the team, because the ball across for Jota, which is put it away, and I contrast that with Andy Ralston's delivery at times. He hammers them across, you know what I mean, and which doesn't leave players much option, you know, to get on the end of it. But I thought Montgomery kept his concentration level and knew that once he got into that position, he had to deliver, and he did. He swept it across, and all it needed was the finishing touch. So, and I like that about Montgomery's game, and I think I think that's moving forward. I think he'll be better deployed in a more forward role. And I agree with you what you say. I just don't think he suits the style playing at left back. He can look uncomfortable at times, and it wasn't his greatest game yesterday, but he justified his inclusion with that cross for the goal for Jota's winner, which is why the manager has faith in him, why he's in the team. Ralston, as you say, I've praised Ralston for recent performances, but I wrote in the Man by Man yesterday, how long can effort and commitment, you know, sustain you in terms of holding on to that jersey? And I would possibly like to see Juranovic, once he's fit, play there. That's his natural position. And I would like to maybe see Scales at left back. I know he maybe likes to play left or a centre back, but I'd like to see Scales there just to try it, to see if it works any better. That's my thoughts. And I'm not saying just bomb the academy players out. I would just like to see these guys play to see if it's any better. There's always room for academy players, and Adam Montgomery's not done much wrong, you know. But just the last couple of games, you just think, okay, but you're allowing for the fact that they're young. You know, well, Adam Montgomery's certainly young as well, so that's what I thought. But to touch upon winning ugly, that's what we've been banging on about from the start of the season, you know, about Celtic with. And that was a great thing about yesterday. It was the winning ugly, because in truth, the second half, Amy, wasn't great. I don't want to go all negative, but the second half was pretty poor. And that was kind of the first chance we created at the end, you know, when they did score near the end. You know, and we created our own problems again with the passing the ball around at the back. You know, I kind of noted down the 18th and the 65th minute, we put ourselves under real pressure. You know what I mean? So we need to kind of work out this system and get, you know, consistent with it, you know, and players being able to play under pressure and work that system that Ange wants to bring in. Don't know what you thought about yourself.
It's tough. And then as we're talking about, you know, all these players that are still going to come back, the biggest thing is still trying to figure out our strongest side and getting that, you know, settled 11. I keep going back. I think last year we had that like 33 different teams in 36 games or something like that. And you don't want to get to a state of that, because consistency is key. But you're spot on, I think, because a lot of our own problems yesterday, and it was along that back line. So as you're talking about, you know, who would be the wing backs or the inverted full backs, whatever it kind of is. I think you'd also be looking along, you know, the centre back pairing as well. I think Chris Jullien coming back, whenever that is going to be, it is going to be massive. It's kind of went all quiet again as to when exactly he'll be back, which is indeed a worrying sign. And I don't want to write Starfelt off. I really, really don't, because, you know, he comes with a good reputation. You don't play where he's played, and, you know, play for the country that he plays for if you're not half decent. But I find that odd, considering that, you know, for Sweden, he can play in the midfield, which to me would then suggest that he's comfortable with the ball at his feet and can be that sort of, you know, passage of play. But when he's in that Celtic back line, I just think he fears having the ball and playing out for the back or trying to link up to anyone in the midfield. If he's not, you know, passing along to Carter Vickers or going back to Hart, I just think he gets a little bit worried. And I think there was a few times yesterday, you know, perhaps a more prolific side, a more confident side as well, because there's no confidence up in that Aberdeen side right now. Would have maybe pounced on him a little bit more. So I think Jullien coming back could be massive. You know, and I think this system, because, you know, he likes to go forward that little bit. We've seen that almost arrogance that he likes to stroll forward, and I'm all for it. It's not an arrogance that I don't like, but just to, you know, to get him going forward a little bit. So that could be a massive addition as well then, because like you say, it's just those little moments that could cost us and will eventually cost us. They have cost us as well. So yesterday was a great example of this winning ugly. And I know a lot of people don't like it because you just say, well, either win ugly or win beautiful. If it's 6-0 or 2-1, it's still 3 points sort of thing. But we talk about so much about the style of football because you need to have a decent style of football, but they're the games that you've just got to take by the scruff of the neck, and it's great that Celtic have done it because perhaps, at 1-1 I was more fearing that, we could walk away with nothing, to be honest with you, because it wasn't the performance that we wanted.
Well, there's Callum coming in there, backing you up there. He said, we thought when Aberdeen equalised we were going to get beat for sure. It was a substance over style. Paddy Lavery comes in and says a Starfelt out of his depth at Celtic. Now, I did the man remands for the Celtic way yesterday. I mentioned 2 words with Starfelt: uncomfortable and cumbersome. Right? And I don't think the Celtic supporters would disagree with that. He doesn't like playing it around at the back. And as you say, if the short pass isn't on to Starfelt, he panics, and and opposition teams can sense that. So it's that's again, you've touched upon it. What you're watching with Starfelt, and you don't want to have a massive downer on him because he does bring some qualities there, but it's just finding a style that maybe suits him, or finding players around about him that make him feel more comfortable in the team. But there's something not connecting with Starfelt when he's trying to play that that football at the back. For me, and for a lot of the Celtic supporters, are now starting questioning, is he out his depth? Well, I think the manager will ultimately be the judge of that. And speaking of the manager, Amy, we've all heard that he had to win football matches. He did it yesterday. So what does he do now? Does he adapt? Does he wait till January till he tries to get the players in? Because Ange himself said this is a 2 or 3 window job, where, to quote, I want to get more players in that I believe can play the type of football we want to play. So that's him still in his head. He's going to trust the process until he gets the players in that can execute the system. Is that fair enough?
Absolutely. It's his mantra, basically. And you've got to give him that window, because if you know that he's going to delve into the Japanese market again. He's admitted that himself. So he's got one case from there, and that's Kyogo. So everybody is ranting and raving about Kyogo. So that will be his example. He'll go, look, well, if you give me another window, 2 more windows to get more guys in like this, then look what we could sort of build. Because there's no denying that Kyogo certainly knows his role. And saying that, I would sometimes, perhaps maybe not him because he's the forward in that, but you're hoping perhaps that Jota, especially maybe in Abada, they just need to do their track and back business a bit more.
Yeah,
that's probably the one downfall at both of their play right now, and just offering that little bit of cover because of the counter and things like that. The way that Celtic play so expansive, so attacking, that when it comes to the counter, they need to get the bodies back behind as well. But it's tough because I think we all kind of know that he's going to just stick to his guns here, and in some cases that will turn out, but other times you just have to go, come on, just a little bit of adaptation, and it's not major changes, it's not anything colossal, it's just there's a few little tweaks here and there, because you look at some, it's more kind of then learning from mistakes. If you bring on a Yeti for 20 minutes, what is he really doing? So is a Yeti the guy that you should be bringing on, sort of thing? And we discussed it last week, Tony, sometimes even going from a 4-3-3, 3-5-2, it's just switching up the formations a little bit, when in attack, when in defence. So it's these little things that we can all be a manager from here, though, that we'd perhaps like to see. But if Ange does it, that's a totally different ballgame.
Well, it was a wee bit pragmatic, Amy, in terms of he brought Beaton in, right?
Yeah.
To that midfield, right? And he functioned with a 6, a 10 and an 8 yesterday. Colin Watt, on the pre-match show, was quick to point that out. And he also said at half-time, I think Colin said that Callum McGregor looked more comfortable with a 6 and a 10 beside him, as he was occupying that 8 role, kind of box-to-box type. So I guess Ange's probably aware that he maybe needs a 6.
Yeah.
From the Japanese market, maybe a defensive midfield type. I don't know, that's probably in his thoughts. but there are others saying that if McCarthy can get up to speed, he could maybe offer you that, because he clearly doesn't trust Sorrow, does he? He maybe thinks that Sorrow's a liability. I don't know that. I certainly think that Sorrow's a liability, but up until Beaton got out jumps for the goal, he was playing okay. He was doing the role that he was asked to do. Yeah, Neil should have scored. Yeah, terrible header, shoulder, whatever it was he hit it with. But but he was functioning, and Celtic were functioning. But then he got out, jumped for the goal, and it went to kind of pieces for him. Then it certainly went to pieces for Celtic for a period in the second half. But what was evident that McGregor was happier playing beside a 6 and a 10, wasn't he? As you say, Turnbull flitted in and out the game, but the quick thinking for the throw and then the cross for the goal, things like that, which is what these guys bring, but you just want to see them do it on a more consistent basis. But I genuinely think that a defensive midfielder could be a priority in January if McCarthy's not going to fill that role all the time.
Absolutely, because that is obviously what we all kind of thought that McCarthy was, coming in for. We knew, he's, I'm not going to say aging, because he is, to be honest, should probably be hitting about his, prime for that sort of position, because you're not asking him to run all the time. But the inconsistencies are there because of the injuries, and that was a worry for all of us. We knew we were bringing in this experienced head, all the Premier League cast behind them, the international appearances, and that was, exciting. But there was always that flip side that there's a reason that James McCarthy's, not even higher up or still not even at the level that his talent actually does possess him to be. But it's just because, he's got 6 months out of time or 9 months out of time. And that's when it can get tricky, because if, you're like, if that's like a job application, basically, everything that you've just described, what you're wanting a player to come in and do, to come in partnership, Callum McGregor as well, you're thinking, well, James McCarthy's kind of like the perfect guy that you need for that role, and you'd employ him straight away. But it's just finding that consistency. Like, say, how long can you actually rely on James McCarthy? It's frustrating, because you just think, wow, we know what he's got in him. Because we've all seen it, any football fan has seen it, if it be on the international stage or in the Premier League, and at the Premier League for so many years as well. And he's always done the dirty work, in an Everton side or a Palace side or something like that. So it's tough. Another player probably will need to come in, because you can't just, like you say, solely rely on one guy who is so injury prone. And do you really then want the backup to be Beaton?
No,
probably the backup.
Well, David Boyle comes in there and said the midfield was much more balanced yesterday. Hopefully we stick with either Rogic or Turnbull. And I used that, saying that it was balanced yesterday. And the thing is as well, when Rogic came on, it was his twinkle toes and swerving pivot that released Montgomery, which led to the goal. So that was a good instance of Ange using his substitutes well, because it paid off. And I think that's been a criticism. You said Haggerty. I didn't see the purpose of Haggerty coming on and shoving Kyogo out wide. But the one substitution that he did make that was telling, and who made a telling contribution, that's what you want subs to do, impact the game, make a telling contribution, was Rogic. And that brought us the winning goal. So that augurs well moving forward as well. If you're going to rotate Rogic and Turnbull as opposed to playing them together in the same side.
I think Ange knows that himself as well. Obviously, Rogic is a guy that he's probably known the longest within the Celtic side. And he knows the impact. Tom Rogic, he can do great within 60 minutes, but in that last half hour, he will really dip off. But he's one of those guys as well that he doesn't need an abundance of time to make the impact. He really can be that impact sub. And if it, you want to start your strongest 11, I understand that. So it's kind of, I feel I'm going to contradict myself here, but if you're going to have to drop one off Turnbull or Rogic, you're just thinking who could potentially make that impact, and it probably would be Rogic more than Turnbull, because he needs a little bit of time to get into the game, get into flow. So I know you want to start your strongest 11, and potentially that could be Rogic, but you've also got to think of that a little bit further forward.
Here he is, this slobber knocker himself. I don't know if you heard that. Anyway, Russell was playing Call My Bluff yesterday, and he educated everybody by saying that the Aberdeen Celtic game was going to be a slobber knocker. There you go, Russell. And for all those out there who went, what? Explain what a slobber knocker is to them.
It wasn't quite yesterday for a start, but it was a term used in the old WWF days back in the 90s. They would call it a slobber knocker. So that's what the term. I kind of came out. I kind of just said it without even thinking about the wrestling connotation.
Well, you educated us all, Russell. Welcome to the Monday Club.
Yes.
Glad to have you. We were talking about the 6, 10 and 8, which Colin Watt spoke about the pre-match show, and we were just discussing about that the Celtic midfield looked a lot more balanced yesterday with Beaton in there, and McGregor looked a lot more comfortable playing alongside a 6 and a 10. Now, we were saying that Ange has probably got his eye on bringing in some kind of defensive midfielder, because moving forward, we don't think that Beaton or Sorrell will fill that role. Whilst we hope it would be McCarthy, we just can't depend on his fitness to play it all the time. But ideally, that's what would happen. So we're thinking possibly that Ange has his eye on a defensive midfielder from the J League or from the A League, or someone who's watched or managed previously. Would you agree with that?
I think he might have a harder task in convincing the board. We all know how notorious the board are in January for spending money. But I also think when they've invested a 4-year deal in James McCarthy, they may have, because if that wasn't an Ange signing, you wouldn't be surprised. He seems to get pigeonholed as this defensive holding midfielder. Not that I'm convinced that actually is what his game is per se, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were thinking it'd be, if you're wanting to do that, then you've already got someone there. So the thing is, Ange, it did seem only got, one of his transfer targets in the summer. And that's my biggest concern, that whilst we say he needs 2 or 3 windows, and I'm all for that, judging on the success of Kyogo, by the way, I mean, that alone, I'm just a wee bit concerned that if he carries on at that ratio, only getting one of his desired targets each window, then it might be more difficult to convince them or not. But I wholeheartedly agree with you on the midfield balance yesterday. I thought it totally worked, and whilst Beaton may well not be the long-term solution, it definitely felt like it was the right type of players in each of those positions, as opposed to square pegs and round holes.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, the right type of players, didn't it? And then also the impact that Rogic made when he came on, which was what he was brought on to do, which brought the winning goal. So it was a kind of victory for Ange in the sense of that they won ugly, but they did the job. They had the substitutes. Well, one substitute in particular did what he was asked to do. So, and another aspect of yesterday, which, brought up Joe Hart, 2 brilliant saves, critical stage of the game, one from Scott Brown and Johnny Hayes, ex-Celtic players, and goodness knows what would have happened if either of them had gone in, Amy. But also, Joe Hart was causing a bit of pressure with that, playing it out from the back at times. The very first clearance, he smacked it out the park, and then in his next move, we were taken right into our corner and put under pressure. I love Joe Hart. I love the influence he's had since he's come in, but you're just kind of thinking, you need to kind of rectify that, don't they, Celtic, if they're going to keep playing it back to Joe Hart in the defence and get some kind of consistency and fluency about knocking it around there and using Joe Hart as an outlet.
Yeah, I think it's going around the merry-go-round too many times. It's going back to the goalkeeper. See, once he's passed it out first time, it should then be, however the method is, they should be able to pass it out, and it doesn't go Joe Hart's out the move. But it's continually going back to him for a second time, a third time, and that's where his uncertainty's coming from. Sorry, Amy. I'm over eager now because I'm back.
I did level that question at Amy, but Russell jumped in, so what do you
I know, sorry. I realised you had. Sorry.
I don't mind. It was just what Russell said. You need him to be able to, to be the heart of it. Let's pardon pun. Actually, I didn't even mean that. And you need him to be. He is an integral part, and that's kind of in this style, in this Ange way of playing. So for him to not have the confidence that he kind of has been oozing since coming into the Celtic side, he's had that the confidence and just kind of had an aura about him that I've got this really, and I get it, and I still believe that he gets it because, I think he ended up tweeting the picture or putting it on his Instagram himself, but that's a guy who celebrated that winning goal as well, because I think he'd obviously realised as well, you look at the Aberdeen goal, he should have just bundled Montgomery out of the way. There's no denying that, that's not the lad out. But I think he realised, obviously, that's kind of on me, so to be then obviously a victor in that game, then it meant a lot. So he definitely gets it. There's no denying that. But I don't know if, I think maybe it was almost like in the first few instances you thought, right, yeah, Hart is going to suit this sort of style of system, playing out for the back, whatever. And he is more than comfortable, but there's been a few times that, if there was a more prolific striker or winger a little bit quicker, he's been caught on his heels a few times, and there's been, the opposition have been pouncing down on him. And if somebody was just maybe a little bit more clinical, then these sort of instances that you all sort of, deep breath in and you get yourself all nervous, then eventually it's going to go the wrong way.
Yeah, I'm not calling out you question his ability, because I think his shot-stopping ability is brilliant. His leadership qualities have been fantastic. I just think yesterday he didn't legislate for Adam Montgomery's lack of height in a jump. No. I genuinely think he thought Adam Montgomery was going to get that, and nobody was more surprised in the net. And Adam was
that's true.
And I think had he anticipated that Adam wasn't getting there, I think he would have thrown him out the road. Because that's the kind of instinctive, reflexive goalkeeper he is. But I genuinely think he thought that Montgomery was getting it, but it was spinning, wasn't it? It was one of those, because it came off, I think, Ferguson's shoulder, didn't it? And it kind of looked. But I think he thought, because we had the guy on the poster covering that side, that he was getting it. So I'll cut him some slack then, but maybe he thinks now, I should just have flung him out the road and got to it, you know what I mean? So that, hindsight's a great thing, but it's still good to look back on it having won the match, Russell. That was the main thing, wasn't it? Job done. Now, I don't like touching upon these things, but I think you have to. The referee yesterday, Bobby Madden. Now, Amy, I looked at a stat. Celtic had 62% of possession, yet allegedly Celtic committed 27 fouls. Somebody needs to sit me down and explain that. Because sometimes football things, I don't understand them. And I certainly don't understand that yesterday. And I think Bobby Madden didn't exactly cover himself in glory. I don't think he had a great game, and not for the first time this season. You look at things that, you look at what Turnbull got booked for, and then I go back to the Andy Halliday challenge on Callum McGregor, which was a real shocker. Didn't get a card. We said it after that game. I think I was on with Russell and yourself, and we said it's up to Celtic now to mention these things. And there's Jason Laird coming and saying VAR can't come soon enough. But do you think Celtic are getting a raw deal, Amy? Is it time that somebody at the club spoke up and said something about the standard of officiating?
Is it just Celtic? I don't know. Yeah. There's the standard of refereeing. It's not at its greatest right now. It's really not. And then I know this is going to sound really contradictory. I'm really not sure if I'm the biggest fan of VAR coming in at Scottish football, if I'm totally honest with you, because it depends on which way that it's operated. So it's going to be really interesting discussions that come ahead, because I'm not a big fan of it at all. I know a lot of people thought it was really well used within the Euros. I actually don't think it was. I think there's a few instances. I always just think of the Lukaku goal. I can't even remember who Belgium were playing, but it was clear as day offside, and it even showed it in the VAR replay, but it was onside, or it was deemed onside. So there's little moments like that. I'm not 100% sure about VAR, but I know that if it's the perfect alternative then to the standard of Scottish refereeing, then needs must, because at that rate though, it's who's going to be operating it. It's just going to be the same sort of guys that are operating it, because that's the nature, because it's not a full-time profession up here either, still refereeing. So perhaps that's an issue in itself, and I've spoken to a few former referees recently, like John Robotham, etc., doesn't need to go to a full-time role. There was just, those two stats that you just rattled off there. It doesn't make sense. And again, it's a tough one, because I just keep thinking, that Halliday tackle on McGregor at the start of the season, that's a joke. If you're looking at other tackles yesterday as well then that studs up He's nowhere near the ball. He's just clearly clipped McGregor. He's yards away from the ball, but then a booking doesn't even come out. So the standard across the board is really, really poor right now.
Russell, your thoughts on that? I mean, I don't like bringing these things up. I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but the evidence is there now, isn't it? You're watching it and you're seeing, clubs. A lot of clubs being refereed to a different standard.
I just think at times as well, it's the wee ones that annoy me. There was a moment that they were showing the replay again on the highlights reel, or on Twitter it was. I think someone had put it up, and it was like Kyogo's off the ball, right? And an Aberdeen player, this is 3 yards in front of the referee. Just as he's walking by, 2 hands, pushes him, Kyogo's flying. Madden's looking right at it and doesn't do anything. And then you get down to the inconsistencies, and again, I'll give you a trivial one. Ralston was halted in his tracks when trying to pinch a couple of yards, right? That's what you do when you're taking your throw in. The Aberdeen boy who'd been greeting his eyes out the whole first half, anything Jota got the ball, fawning about like a sack of tatties. He was an embarrassment, man, honestly. But he runs with the ball for 20 yards up the touchline. Nothing said. Ball in his hand, he's stealing, well, maybe not 20 yards, but you know what I mean. Say a considerable amount of travelling he did with the ball in his arms before the throw-in. And the Ralston incident had only been moments before. So that sort of inconsistency, you're going, I would love us to be, looking at it and saying it's just the referees are poor. And there's other times you've got to feel at times that is a raw deal. There's the comment coming in for Paul. I mean, we were without possession for only 37 minutes. And in that time, 27 fouls, it's an unrealistic number.
Yeah, I foul every 82 seconds out of possession. Really, I found that right. And the one that got to me was Turnbull's booking. I mean, it was a nonsense. And Turnbull got booked because I think he'd let other things go and didn't grab the game by the scruff of the neck as a referee should, and booked Turnbull for the sheer hell of it.
Yeah.
And it was for absolutely nothing. There you go. Brown Warrior comes in. The tackle on McCarthy last week was a potential season ender for him as well. Look, we're not disagreeing. We're just highlighting the fact that maybe it is time Celtic, a representative of Celtic, said something about it. Because, and as Amy said there as well, not just Celtic, but then that's up to other clubs to have their representatives question it as well. But yesterday was kind of one of those games where, I just thought, you know what? I just felt that I didn't think Madden had a great game. Let's put it that way.
I think because the VAR is a good point that Amy's making as well. How are they going to implement this? Because I was hearing on the radio it might be a more cost-effective way to implement VAR using Scottish officials as the person behind the thing. And I kind of was like, there's a bit of irony in that, The reason that we're looking for VAR is because we're thinking they're incompetent, not so we, I don't know. I suppose it would put to bed that it's a moment's instance where they've got it wrong and they're only human. If you then got one of them, still getting it wrong when they've looked at it 3 or 4 times, then, we can obviously look a wee bit deeper into what the reasons for that could be. But I do understand that VAR would be a very expensive thing to bring to Scottish football. Or you go down the cheaper road of kind of officiating it yourself, which wouldn't surprise you if we had to go down that road, such as the sort of meagre sponsorship deals that we've got in the country's the national game right now.
But there seems no punishment for referees that continually get things wrong, Russell, because they end up refereeing Celtic, Rangers, Hibs, Hearts the following week. There's no. So they seem to be able to make mistakes, glaring ones, and then they're back at a top flight game the next week, Amy. So there's no real deterrent there, is there, for them to improve per se?
No, there's only a certain calibre that can play or can referee, officiate at this level. So needs must. And again, it's going to be an issue that's going to be talked about so much after that kind of like initial talk does take place about VR. That was obviously confirmed last week. So it's going to be interesting because I don't know if it is the answer. And I know you've got to then offer some sort of alternative. I do believe the alternative is making referees on a full-time basis because it's a profession, it is a career, and perhaps more time. I don't know how else it would really that'd be my alternative option really, to go down that route, because I think VAR it really does also depend on who's operating it. But if you look at right now the model that's in the Premier League down south, would you really want that up here? It causes so many controversies, all these wiggly lines that there's no way half of them are straight, and it's like, if this guy had clipped his toenail, would that mean that he'd have been onside? Like it's tiny margins like that, and it does take the buzz out of the game as well. I don't know, like if any of you have experienced it yet, but it's not. It just takes, you can even be sitting at home, and you think it's a great goal, and then you're having to wait a few minutes, and it's like dissecting it, and it does take the buzz out of it. And this is the same obviously across Europe. So you need to think about things like that as well. I know you're never ever going to please everybody, and then it is offering that option, because here we are saying that maybe the standard of refereeing isn't at its greatest, so then you're offering something else to come in, and then we're just kind of turning your noses up at it. But I think it just depends how it's going to be implemented, who's going to officiate it really, and what kind of VAR is it going to be? The VAR, the Euros, so many people did praise. I'll be honest, I wasn't one of them. Or is it going to be like the one that we see across sometimes the Champions League, you see down in the Premier League down there, but it's just sometimes it's just the inconsistencies.
Right, we'll move on. I want to talk about the strap line, Russell. Can Pittodrie victory reignite Celtic's title challenge? Now, the three of us spoke last week, and we were grave concerned about Celtic winning any of the 3 away games that we had coming up this month. Pittodrie, Fir Park and Easter Road. Now, we've set ourselves up nicely to win all 3. These on such matters can seasons turn. You go and you grind it out, and you stay in it. You stay in the title race until January, when the manager can maybe do something, and the board can help the manager work, and work things out and get in better players. Is that the way you see it now, that Ange now has a platform upon which to build after winning yesterday and winning ugly and winning the way that we hoped that this Celtic team could do from the start of the season?
Well, I think there's been a lot of chat now. People are maybe trying to compare it to the Kilmarnock game. I think it was 2010, was it 2011? And
they were 3 down.
Yeah, the Neil Lennon game was the 3-0, and people are trying to sort of compare it to that. And I see some similarities, to be honest with you. I really do, because it was a desperate start to the season that year. It's been a desperate one this year. But a win can galvanise you and also shows you the way. Now you've got a win, and that's the jinx over now, and now you could start also what we've seen yesterday with the lineup. We've commented on the midfield shape, for example. Maybe you're now looking at more of a winning formula away from home. The most impressive thing for me yesterday was we won a wee bit ugly at times. And I've got no issue with that. I didn't have this team, from what I'd seen so far, I didn't have them down as being capable of winning in a manner that they did yesterday. And for that, I'm delighted to be wrong. But it was the first time I think we've seen hints of that. And I'm hoping, I know every game's got different, every opposition's different. You're going to be coming against different obstacles, different tactics, formations, setups. But I think what we showed yesterday was a wee bit of adapting. We managed to get the job done. And I think that's the first time I've said this season, apart from AZ, even though we still lost that match away from home, we got the job done.
Smile, Russell, smile. Now, that brings on to a kind of wider point, maybe then, if Celtic can hang on until January, just keep the gap to what it is, or maybe reduce it, about ins and outs. Now, we know we touched upon it earlier before us come on about Ange saying that he's going to go into the J-League or the Japanese market and maybe try and recruit some other players, but some outs. I mean, you have to think that it's the kind of end of the road for guys like Barkas, Bolly, possibly even a Jetty. You'd probably think, cut your losses and see what happens and see if you can get something for them. But if they're going to bring in players, you're going to bring in players to make your team better. You have to jettison the ones that just aren't playing or are playing big parts or you don't see have a future at the club. And I would think that Barkas, Bolly and Haggerty fall into that category. Do you agree? I
think Barkas definitely does. That's just been one of these failed projects. The guy's heart's not in it either. I think was it the first game back at Parkhead, you saw those videos folk were taking it, he was just so unbothered, just not an interest, a care in the world, anything like that. So it's just not been one of those successful projects. I think for himself as well, he'll need to get his career somehow back on track. But if that's his sort of attitude, then I think he'll struggle. Yeti, I don't know. I don't actually see him going. It's an iffy one because it's tough. Like, it's kind of that knee jerk that, he had a few goals a few weeks ago and everyone was going, this is just what he needed. He needed that little bit of run of form. But then there's the frustration because then he goes a few games without really, producing really anything. It's because his attitude's not there. And I kind of always go back to, remember when we had Timu Puki and he just looked the most uninterested guy. And I think I get really frustrated when I see him like down at Norwich, especially when he was in the Championship and he was scoring like 20 to 30 goals, kind of like, oh my God, you actually look like you want to go and, win a ball and whatever. I thought when Pookie was up here, there was just, I always remember the game at Tynecastle, and I just thought, just have a little bit of want, go and chase down that ball, put a little bit of pressure on. But he just sort of floated about and didn't really seem to have a care in the world. And I think Yeti sometimes goes down that path as well, almost like into like a bit of a strop. Like if he's not getting the ball right into his feet, if he's not getting into those positions at that time, and he's just kind of like giving up the ghost, to be honest. So I don't know. I think a lot of fans would actually be disappointed to see him go. And I think that's a weird one considering where he actually is at. But I'd personally try and give him until the end of the season. And again, because it does depend on who we bring in the window as well. Because Giakoumakis is still kind of like an unknown quantity at this stage in a Celtic shirt. It'll really take until he probably gets his first goal, gets a few runs in the team to really like establish and determine how good he could potentially be. But I think it's kind of important because you look at the state we were in just last week, if Kyogo picks up another injury, then we're left a little bit short. I think Barkas and a goalkeeper role is a little bit different. And then for Bolingoli, he's not in the European side or European squad, so there's not that much. To that extent, it appears that Ange doesn't have the most sort of confidence in his ability, sort of thing. But again, he was just kind of flung in out of nowhere, wasn't he? So it's understanding, the relationships. But I wouldn't actually be too disappointed to see him go, to be honest.
Yourself, Russell, who goes in January?
Yeah, I think the three names that you said are, certainly, definitely, though, they've got to go. Yeti's a difficult one. I think we're already used to him more this season than what we actually would have liked to, just purely because he doesn't fit the way that we're playing. He looks uncomfortable in the system. He looks like he's starved of the service that he needs and the type of. I mean, I think it was on. Was it Thursday? He came on. He touched the ball twice, both times in his own half. I mean, he's not going to work. I think Giakoumakis needs to get fit. But I think the 2-week break, whilst it might not have came at a great time for Celtic because we've got our first away win, I actually think there's positives in that as well, where like the likes of him could get up to speed, Forrest will be closer, things like that. I'm going off on a tangent. As for Ajeti, I mean, if we can't bring in at least one, if not two more forwards in January, then we are going to need to keep him. I don't think we can sell him on that. But in terms of how does he fit the Celtic setup at this moment in time, and whether he's a player I'd be looking to keep just in isolation, looking at Ajeti, not for me now, unfortunately. I think he's not going to be quite up to
it. Our boss man has just put up, a 13-year-old has been charged for a breach of the peace and reported to Youth Justice Management Unit for throwing a bottle after Jota scored the winner. Yeah, that was a very unsavoury incident at Pittodrie yesterday, and I think Andy Walker highlighted it, didn't he, in his commentary? Yep. He was questioning how you could allow a youngster to do such a thing, and I was firmly behind Andy Walker condemning that live on air, and well done to him. But these are just things that are becoming too frequent at football now, Amy, and it's unacceptable, isn't it? And if that's what has to happen to youngsters to teach them some kind of lesson, it's just unacceptable in any walk of life, and it's unacceptable certainly at the football.
Absolutely, and if it's not coming from parenting, then it needs to come from a more powerful source like that, and really set the precedent, because you can't be having that, especially not in the Scottish game. You look at across European leagues, what's happened over the last week, talking about youngsters and their impact at games. It's been really rather unsavoury. So you don't want to have that within your own game.
Russell, yourself, it's unsavoury, and it's the age is a concern. That it's 13.
You stole my words. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I just find that so sad. I really do. I don't know if it's a parental issue or whatever, but I just find that at 13 years of age, you throw a bottle at a footballer. I can't get my head around that. I never will. At that age, when I was watching football, I was loving seeing these footballers from the team I supported and great players from the opposition. I love the game, and I just love being at it. It wouldn't occur to me to do something like that. So that was a sadness from yesterday. Yeah, poor. But I mean, we spoke about at the top of the programme, Russell, that we're on a Monday club and we're celebrating a Celtic away win, the first one since Valentine's Day. And it's a wonderful feeling, and we've been very, very positive about moving forward and things that could happen. And I don't know. I think the way people celebrated that winning goal yesterday, the team, the fans, and the manager, you just felt something was stirring, didn't you? Something's turning. There's a mindset change about it all, and hopefully that is, as the start line says, the victory that reignites the title challenge.
I think you're right, and I think as well with regards to why it felt like something was stirring. What's impressed me is the likes of Kyogo and Jota in particular, with their absolute passion for the cause. They're not faking it.
Yeah.
Really? There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I mean, definitely. I mean, that's the inspiring thing. And then when you've got the likes of Cal McGregor educating the rest, James McCarthy hopefully can get himself fit and become the player we all know he can. Because again, he doesn't need educated on what's happening right now. He gets it from the off. So I think Ange definitely was needing the win. And I certainly think what it proved yesterday was the vast, vast, vast majority, if not all, are very much still supporting the manager. And I think there was that air of relief yesterday as well, that win's gone. That win's happened now, because with that win happening, it's kind of puts to bed any doubters that, he doesn't know what he's doing, he can't change his setup, he doesn't know what he's doing away from home, we're too open, we're too expansive. You didn't really see that yesterday, albeit we were poorer in the second half. I just happened to think Aberdeen got to grips with the game at half-time and came out with a better strategy. But at the end of the day, we dug deeper and got a result, and that really encourages me. And I know that sounds like real trivial football and cliches, digging deep and rolling the sleeves up and stuff like that, but for me, Celtic haven't done that enough this season. So I was really, really, really enjoyed it yesterday. That's my most pleasing one of the season, no doubt.
Oh yeah, and I think that's where a lot of, I would say, negativity or criticism has come from, because now that you know that's in the Celtic team to do that, Amy, that's what we've been wanting from them from the get-go, from when the ball kicked off at Tynecastle in the league campaign. That's all you wanted to see, and the ability to get a result like that. And I think it will do the manager and the players of the world a good. They know they can do it now, and as you say, winning ugly, it doesn't matter how you do it. It was definitely substance over style, so I'll take that any day. We work in finesse and style later when Ange gets the players in to play the system he wants. But until then, you compile a sequence of results, and then once you get the guys in that you want over those 2 or 3 windows, which you have said, then you can produce the style. And I'm happy with that. That's all I want from Ange. It's not about having agendas again. We want the manager to succeed. Look at us, we're smiling on a Monday because our team's won. The world's a better place when your team wins and it wins an important game.
Exactly.
Isn't that right, Amy?
Just all about winning football games.
Yeah, correct. And that's the thing. Right, Michael Cathart, do you 3 think we can win the league realistically? I don't think Rangers are anywhere near the side they were last year. Well, Michael, you've kind of half answered the question. If Rangers aren't anywhere near the side they were last year, and Celtic get their act together in any shape or form, it's conceivable that they can win it. I still believe that they can win it. You know, they're not out of it. We've never ever said they were out of it. And if Rangers aren't the force they were, then of course Celtic are going to challenge. But as Amy's just said there, it's all about winning football matches. Amy, do you think Celtic can win the league?
You can't write it off, and it's kind of what we were saying last week, and that's where the frustration came from, because it's evident that Rangers aren't the same side as they were last season. But last week they still, won that game against Dundee, and we never won against Dundee United. So it's the little fine margins like that. But you can't say no. You can never say no until it's mathematically impossible. My God, there were still people last year who thought in January that Celtic would still go on and be able to, win the league. So they certainly aren't the same force as they were last season. But it's got to be, Celtic have just got to take it in their own hands right now. You've just got to keep winning football games.
I can't speak for Russell, but I'm sure he would have said yes, Amy. Yeah, I think he was very positive after yesterday. So it's been a real positive show. I've loved that, talking about Celtic winning various topics regarding Celtic. Thank you, Amy, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all the commenters. And if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook and other social media platforms, remember to hit the subscribe button. You can enter yourself into a free prize draw for some lovely prizes. Thanks very much.